Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today to learn more about tips for conducting a discreet job search. I'm really happy you're here with us today. My name is Jody Hammer, and I am the Career Services Specialist for the National Peace Corps Association's Global Reentry Program. So I have the wonderful job of being able to work with you, the returned Peace Corps volunteer population, on job search related things, career and transition assistance. So I'm excited to be here today talking about tips for conducting a discreet job search, because there are some times where you have to be more discreet than others. So we're going to talk a lot about those. Now, for folks who are currently unemployed, certainly this is something that would be good information for the future as well. You don't have to be nearly as discreet or discreet really at all when you're doing a job search, when you are unemployed and looking for work, right? But you still need to be, you don't want to come across as desperate, so you want to take some of these tips as well. So we're going to go ahead and start talking about that. I do want to make sure that you feel welcome to put any of your questions in the chat box. Just put those questions in there. Lexi will be feeding those questions to me through the presentation if they're, as they come in, if there are appropriate ones. And we'll also have a lengthy, a Q&A part at the end of the session too. I don't have a ton of slides on this topic, and then we'll be able to answer all of your questions on this topic and others, okay? So let's go ahead and get started. So typically, as I said, when you're, the need to be discreet, right, is usually more related to having a current job or some kind of opportunity where you don't necessarily want them to find out before you get that other job offer, right? So, but before we even talk about that, when you're in a job, and I'm sure people have been in a job before that maybe they haven't, they've gotten, maybe they enjoyed it in the beginning, but they've gotten to the point where there's not challenges anymore, or they're finding it maybe boring, or it's just not helping them develop or increase their skill set. And so, that's the time that it's those kinds of situations where that's the time to start thinking about quitting your job. And generally the best time to quit your job is after you have your new job, right? That's the least risky. So this is a graphic actually from one of my favorite sources, the Balance Careers. They have a really good, they do a great job in blogging, in covering almost every job search topic you can imagine. And they have a really good artist or whoever, they do amazing graphics like this. So these are just some of the signs that, it's time to quit your job, right? If you dread going to work every day, that's a big sign. You're not enjoying your job. Now, it could be that it's one specific project that you're just waiting for it to end, or something that's, going to end at some point. But in general, if you're dreading going to work, that's not a good sign. You're not going to be as productive. You're not going to certainly be able to stay in more of that positive mental state, all of that. So another sign is when you're procrastinating more than really than you're getting your work done, right? So many times the items that you're procrastinating on would take not even that long. It'd be like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, but you spend all this time procrastinating, so much more time procrastinating than actually doing that work. That's another sign that you're either bored or you're unhappy, that it's right. It's the time for you to start thinking about another job. Obviously, when it takes a toll on your health, I mean, so many people, and I think, RPCVs included, right? You give your all to a job, right? You throw yourself into it. And sometimes to an extent where, you're working, 80 hours a week, you're not getting the sleep that you need. You're not taking those breaks and those, that are so restorative and so helpful for you in staying healthy. And so it can actually cause you to have, some types of health issues. So that's obviously a time where you'd want to reevaluate. Maybe, if you find yourself complaining too much or venting too much to people, and that's like what you spend your time doing, that's another sign, right? I mean, if it really is that you're just not happy and you're just, spending so much time, talking about it, it's time to think about what's next for you. And that's a process. And doesn't mean that you'll leave your job tomorrow. It's let's look at what is out there, what I might like better, what I feel like doing, what skill sets I want to use, all of those kinds of things. So really important as well. Sometimes you get to a situation where, you know, you come in at a position and you think that there's going to be more of like that opportunity for advancement, but maybe you've already advanced to the extent that's possible, you know, and you've reached kind of that dead end, right? It may not be that you don't like your job, but thinking ahead, you want to maybe advance in a certain area, and you're realizing that, you know, that's not going to happen in this position. So then it's time to think about getting out or finding another position that's going to give you that sense of growing, you know, that growth mentality that might be important for you to feel, you know, you're enjoying your job, right? And then you know, it could be, I mean, there's so many other reasons too, right? But it could be that you feel like you're silenced at your job, or that your input is not being taken, or, you know, that it's just, you're not able to be who you want to be, right? Maybe it's a toxic work environment, right? Sadly, that's, you know, that's a really serious issue, right? Where they're not supportive, and it's, you know, that has major implications on your health as well. So all of these reasons, right, are all of these signs that it might be time to think about, you know, looking at a new job. Okay, so with that, let's talk a little bit before you start thinking about a new job. I always want to, you know, remind folks, you know, a good first step is to kind of look at the internal options for promotion, right? Or opportunities for promotion. Now, it depends on how big of a company you have. You know, there might be other departments that are doing work that's really fascinating or would give you that growth, you know, that additional skill set that you're wanting to develop in order to, you know, reach your long-term career goals. So I always say it's great to, you know, start within first. And, you know, expressing an interest in, you know, it's not like you go to your boss and say, I want to work in a different department, but rather trying to kind of do some networking with people in that different department, right? So, you know, when you have the opportunity, whether it's, you know, over lunch hour or wherever, you know, maybe it's different committees that you serve on, you know, in your job. And take the time to get to know people that are in some different departments, you know, if it's, especially if it's, you know, if it's a larger, you know, organization, you don't necessarily know everyone, right? And find out more about what their work is, what it involves. And when you volunteer for some of those things like committees, other people get to know you and as a person and as a professional. So when you do a great job and you're that kind of go-getter, you take things on, you volunteer, that is great because it makes you a known entity within your organization. And then what can happen is when they do have opportunities that arise, they say, you know, Jane was she was really great when she took on that, you know, whatever position or that opportunity, whatever. Let's see if she might be interested in this. I mean, for the company, it's much easier to do an internal hire, right? I mean, of course they have to then hire the person that was, you know, replaced, but it's great because they can get somebody who, you know, has already that knowledge, you know, internally. And so that's a really good first step. Unless, you know, it's the other things like the toxic work environment and you have no interest in being at this organization at all, whether it's in a different department or not. So that's a different issue. So let's talk briefly, and I want to do a little bit of a poll. I'm hoping that folks can drop into the chat box the answer to this question. In your mind, why is it important to keep your job search discreet if you're currently employed? So just throw those into the chat box, and I'm probably going to ask Lexi for a little help. I'm going to pull up the chat box here as well, if I can fit it in my little corner as I'm presenting here. So great. All right. So why is it important to keep your job search discreet if you're currently employed or doing something, whether it's volunteer or employed, right? So if people have ideas on that, please drop them into the chat box. What are some of the fears? I mean, a lot of times it comes down to fear, right? But it's fear of what? You know, you don't want to let it out that you're looking for a new job because of a fear of what? Okay, Alyssa, great. It could actually, Lexi, it could be possibly seen as rude or they might, you know, they might take offense. Oh my gosh, you're looking for another job, and then they might treat you differently, right? Fear of retaliation, Sarah, great one. I think that's the biggest one that people tend to fear is, you know, retaliation from the current employer, right? And not being considered for future projects. Absolutely, because they're thinking you're a short-termer. You know, you already have your mindset on going somewhere else, so they might not give you as interesting of work. And let's face it, it might take a while to get that new job, right? So those are all good. And let's see, Alyssa, thank you. Future recommendations, not to burn bridges, right? You never want to burn bridges, right? With any of your jobs, even if it was a nightmare type of organization, you want to always try to maintain that professionalism, and and so that you have that, at least, positive experience of, you are a professional, and that that would come out, if you were to need to share them for a reference, or things like that. So yeah, so these, you actually hit on a lot of what I have. I'm going to go to the next slide, which is basically some of the ones that I put down here. It can compromise your current job security, right? They might think, well, you're a job, you're looking to leave anyway. So if we're looking at reducing, let's just let you go, and nobody wants to be let go before they're ready to, before you have another source of income, because that's a really risky type of position. Now, are there ever positions or situations where it does make sense to leave, even if you don't have another job lined up? Absolutely. If it's a situation where it is impacting your health to an extent that it is dangerous for your health, and you have a support system with whom you can maybe stay, so that you don't have expenses while you're unemployed, that might be an exception. But generally, you want to have that new job before you leave the security of your old one, right? Backlash by coworkers or your team. That can be, they might take offense that you're trying to leave, and, people find out. You have to be really careful, because people can find out, right? Especially if you're telling different people, and the whole water, that go into the water fountain or whatever, there's a lot of talk, and sometimes people aren't as good at keeping, and being discreet. So, it may take you a while to get a job. Maybe you are going for a job and it doesn't come through, and that can be kind of embarrassing, right? If you didn't find something that you liked, then they knew that you were looking. It's like, well, she was looking but couldn't find a job, right? And that can feel embarrassing, right? So all of those, plus what you've shared, those are really those are good reasons that you brought out as well. Thank you. And again, a note: if you're not employed, there's no need to be so secretive with your job search, right? You can definitely let it out there. You don't want to let out the desperation, but rather, I'm excited to be, doing a job search, and I'm focusing on the XYZ sector. And you can definitely, when you're networking and things like that, it's good, but you don't want to do here's my resume, can you get me a job? I need a job. I really need a job now. That's not going to help. That just exudes desperation, and nobody wants to hire a desperate person. Okay. So let's see, if you have any questions, please throw them in the chat box. And I have some tips here, a few tips for conducting a discreet job search, right? So share, it doesn't mean that you can't share in confidence, that you are looking for a job. You want to share because you want to network, right? And networking is important, but you want to share much more, in confidence, and with more of a limited trusted people that right? That are your advocates, or that, are on your side, right? Who aren't going to judge, or aren't going to tell your current employer, that kind of thing, right? So you just have to be more, very much in confidence, keeping things in confidence, asking people to, right? Emphasizing to them, right? I really, want to make sure that I'm just starting this, and I'm, just, looking and such, but I really want to keep this confidential. So thank you for your help in that, so that they don't, talk to other people, or, let them know you're looking, that kind of thing. Unless it's someone and they do it discreetly, that kind of thing, right? So you still do want people that in your trusted network to connect you with other people, right? That's networking. And that's one of the biggest ways to get a job, or to find out about those jobs that then you can compete for, and get interviewed for, and selected for. So, also important with this, I would say, is making sure that you do your job search outside of your current job. Okay. You do not want to have, you do not want people at your job to see you with your resume up on your screen, right? Printing, using their printer, definitely big no-no, right? Using your work email even. You don't want to use your work email for your job search. Why? Well, there's several reasons, right? But one of the big ones is for whoever you're going to, the company that you're going to, if they see that you're using your work address, email address for a job search, they're like, wow, she's conducting her job search on her employer's dime. That's not the kind of person that I want to bring on, right? So be really careful about that as well. And just keep it very, very separate. So that's good. And, you take your time, like fit it into your schedule. If you have like maybe a phone call or something like that, fit it into your schedule so that maybe it's your lunch or whatever. So you're doing it outside as much as possible and away from the office or with your, if you have, ideally doing it outside of the office too, right? So those are a couple of things. What other tips have you heard? Have any of you heard other tips for conducting a discreet search, or what has worked for you in the past to keep that low profile and yet make contacts and find out about jobs and all of that? If you have, you can just drop it in the chat box, or I actually invite you to. We have a small enough crew here. You could certainly unmute yourself and just say it as well. So, okay. All righty. So let's go on here, and people can certainly still add some more ideas on how to keep your job search discreet. So you want to do your research, right? Before you even launch like a large scale job search, right? You want to be able to do your, research and find out about the kinds of opportunities that are out there, or before that, it might even be, what do I want, right? I did a webinar not that long ago. It's one of the ones that you can find on our YouTube channel, but about how do you decide, what you want to do? Like, what are some of the, creative career, tools for, job searching, for career exploration, that kind of thing. Sometimes you just really know that you don't want to do what you've been doing. And so you're looking at, I don't know for sure. So that's going to take a little longer. So maybe before you start in that full-on job search, it makes sense to know what you're looking for, right? So do some of those kinds of questionnaires, those kind of tests that, help you to see, wow, people who have a similar type of, personality, or your Myers-Briggs, whatever report, tend to like careers that are involving people and training and things like that, where it can give you some ideas to be able to say, wow, that actually sounds interesting. And then do your research on that, right? Do your research on those topics, on those jobs. And some of that will be doing a job search, like looking for, okay, what kinds of opportunities are available in this? But you'll also search for, where's the best place to find jobs in, program management or whatever it is that you're looking to do, right? So do your research, and there's a lot of that, and you can do that on your own time, right? Your nights, weekends, outside of your work, right? And sometimes that takes more time than others, but it's a very important step, because if you're just blindly going at, okay, I need another job, I'm not really happy in this job, and you don't really spend some time thinking around, why am I unhappy? What are the parts of this job that are not gelling with me? So trying to find those kinds of insights on yourself and the kind of jobs that you want before you launch the official, like job search, where you have your resume and doing the applying for the jobs. Okay. But also network, and you want to network, like I said, you want to really kind of network carefully and, in confidence, not that whole posting on your, LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever, I'm looking for a job, anyone have contacts in? You don't really want to do that if you're trying to keep things discreet with your current job, okay? Don't express desperation. I actually already emphasized that a little bit, but nobody wants to hire somebody who's desperate, right? It's not a trait that they value or want to really have on the team, right? They want to have more of the resilience and flexibility, all of those skills that you learned in Peace Corps, right? And beyond, maybe. So you want to emphasize those kinds of, and your teamwork, your abilities to excel working in a team, all those kinds of skills. Okay. Always maintain professionalism, in your job search, in your career exploration, in any interactions, right? So if you're connected with somebody, even if they're not as professional, or maybe they're late coming to the meeting, whatever it is, you maintain your professionalism and your positive outlook, and because that's going to get you a lot farther. Okay. And then, lastly, I have here really, invoke your trusted contacts. Think about your close connections, right? This could be your fellow RPCVs from, your same stage in Peace Corps, right? Your same group in Peace Corps. It could be your college friends that you're still in touch with that, have lasted all these years. It could be, a mentor of yours, right? That has been a mentor in the past. And I always advise people to keep in touch with those people, because they can be great references, and they can also help you when you're kind of stuck. Like maybe you want out, but you're not sure what you want to do. They sometimes can, help you. It's a lot easier sometimes to see things clearly from the outside than inside when you have all of the other stuff swirling around. So it can be very helpful. So thinking about them, it could be, it could be it could be family, relatives, family friends who, work in whatever field. And so getting their, insight and contacts can be really helpful, right? When you go out and do this, you don't necessarily even need, for your trusted contacts that they're going to keep it, you could certainly say, I'm looking at a career change or a job change, really doing my research first, and as part of that, I'm wanting to connect with professionals who work in the international development whatever sector, and to hear a little more about their own experience, any tips they might have for a professional such as myself, something like that, right? So that can be, and you could say, do you by chance know anyone in that field and whatever? And they could put the word out, but you know what they don't have to do? They don't have to say, my niece or my friend, Susan Smith. They don't have to say the person's name, your name, when they're going out. They could say, hey, I'm trying to connect with people who are working in da-da-da-da for a friend who's, thinking about transitioning into the field, wants to gain a little more insight from, professionals currently in the field. And they could get those contacts for you and feed them to you, instead of them doing a LinkedIn post that who knows who all sees. LinkedIn's huge, right? So that, I think that can be oftentimes the important part, right? So I hope that helps. Are there any questions that have come in? I'm looking here at the chat box. I don't see any. If you do have any, feel free to either unmute yourself or just drop those in the chat box, and we'll definitely try to touch those, cover those as much as possible, okay? So I want to talk a little bit about LinkedIn, because let's face it, LinkedIn is the largest platform for connecting with people, with jobs, there's just, it's huge, right? And so in the job search, most career professionals, right, would definitely urge you to consider using LinkedIn, right? You should have a LinkedIn account is what they'll say, right? And that's because a majority of employers will actually look at your LinkedIn. They'll look up your LinkedIn account or do a search for you on LinkedIn before they hire you, right? They want to see they've seen your resume. It looks great, right? Looks like you have all the skills, but your LinkedIn profile is a little more of that personal kind of touch on your professional. It can still be and should be professional, I think, but it's a little more insight into you as a person, right? And your, your writing skills and your, how do you present yourself, right? To see if you might be a good fit for their organizational culture, right? So it's, the vast majority, 90 to 95%, I think, are the stats that I saw most recently on the percentage of Fortune 500 companies that that check your LinkedIn account. It's huge, right? So you definitely, you want to have a LinkedIn account. Now, if you start making a lot of changes to your LinkedIn account and you're just doing that on the surface, like, okay, I want to, kind of show myself differently, so I'm going to go in and update this. The default setting is going to let all your contacts, so your friends, family, professional coworkers, everyone know that you've updated your profile, right? When do you generally update your profile? When you're looking for a job. So that can really kind of be a giveaway. But there are ways to avoid that. LinkedIn very smartly has several features, and you can choose, for example, as I have written here, you can change your privacy settings on LinkedIn so that you are hiding your profile update. So in other words, no one will find out when your profile is updated. It'll just show differently the next time they happen to come across it, right? So
we have one question in the chat from Alyssa. Sure. She says, Jody, have you done a revise your LinkedIn profile presentation?
I haven't, but that's a really good idea, Alyssa. That's, gosh, you know what? Lexi, make a note of that. I'm going to too. We will add that to our, I'll add that to my webinar topics, because I'm always looking for new topics. I don't want to just do another webinar on interviewing or, whatever. I want to make sure it's meeting your needs and have some of those niche ones. So that could be a really good one, like refreshing, a LinkedIn refresh, or LinkedIn, updating your profile. I like that. That's a really good idea. Thank you, Alyssa. And then let's see here. And Alyssa, if you want, you can even shoot me an email if you'd like with that. I think you have my email, but if not, you can always reach me at careers@peacecorpsconnect.org. So you could certainly shoot that to me with the subject line of, a webinar recommendation. That's awesome. I'll make sure to put that in. I can probably plug it in for November even. So I'm pretty full and all booked for October, but I think I could fit that in for November, no problem. Looks like Nathan has a question too. Is that right?
Yes. Oh, Nathan says, how would you schedule an interview for a new job while you are working a job on weekdays?
How would you schedule an interview for a new job while you're working a job on the weekdays? Yeah, that gets tough. Well, right now it tends to be everyone's doing everything online, right? So not as tough, but if you had to actually go to a place, you'd have to take time off, right? Or, and ask them what the time range is, or the time frame that they're looking at, for hiring. Sometimes they can do like the late afternoon where you could just leave. But right now it's pretty much it's pretty much everything online. So you might be able to do it over your jobs, over your lunch break, but you wouldn't necessarily want to do it at if it's on your lunch break and you have an office that has a door, you know what I mean? You could potentially do that, but I always try to have it be from where you're not going to get interrupted and you're not, so I prefer to do that. But yes, it's a little hard. You almost have to take a little bit of time off, or, rearrange your schedule accordingly. Maybe you come in and work early, or you stay late to give some time for that. Yeah. Okay. And then it looks like I want to just go back up to Alyssa, because you said, what do you put on applications that ask, is it okay to contact this employer? Good point. Good question. So if it's your current employer, it's very understood and very okay that you might say, either do not contact, or better yet, please contact me first. Please let me know first, because when they're contacting your references when they are literally at the end, like they're debating on, they want to hire you, or it might be between you and one more person, right? And they're going to compare the whatever. So you wouldn't want them to go to your employer before before necessary, right? Now, it's even allowed to not have them talk to your current employer for fear of, you don't want to let them know. They understand you don't want to let your current employer know that you may not be, there much longer, that kind of thing. So in that case, there might be somebody who is maybe you put your current, your former employers. Now, if those are listed as do not contact, that's a huge warning sign for employers, because that tells them, nobody wants to they don't want anyone to vouch for them. What does that mean? Were they a bad performer at all these companies? So typically after you've left a job, right, and then it's in the past, there shouldn't be a problem with them. Hopefully, if you have a good relationship, right? There shouldn't be a problem with them contacting them, and they could, give you that kind of information. Okay. I hope that answers it. And let's see if it's your current employer. Yeah, great. So if there's other questions, just drop them in the chat box like you've done. Thank you so much, Alyssa and Nathan. Anyone else, you're welcome to do so as well, okay? So the other thing that I want to say, you have, with your connections, right? You can make those private. You don't have to have it show everyone you know, right? Like when somebody else is looking, at you, or they're looking at your profile, they can see then, like when they do their searches, this person knows this person and all of that. You can, there's an easy way, and I'm going to include, you can just do a Google too, but I'm going to include a LinkedIn article that was on how to conduct a discrete job search with your LinkedIn. Like, what are some of the settings that you'll want to change? It's not hard to make them. They're either in your central settings or, your profile, area. So be cognizant of that, and that should be a good resource for you. Be careful when you're posting articles. Articles are great to post. It shows that you're in the know and you're sharing things. So the good thing about doing that is that it can be seen as, you want it to be seen like that you're, thought, you're somebody that is, professional, that knows this area, that's, so it's, you want that because that's professional. But if you start throwing a lot of articles up and things like that, it can also, depending on how you put the, the intros too, it can also be like, well, what are they doing? Why are they doing so much? Are they looking to, try to typecast themselves as, this to get a job? So you just want to be careful with the articles and stuff, right? You don't mention the job search. Now, when you meet people at networking events or LinkedIn, when you're, talking to people, it's certainly fine, to say, you might be able to do that where you don't want to say, I'm in the job search, I'm looking, to leave or whatever, but you might say, I've really enjoyed my time working with, Save the Children, and I've, feel proud of the accomplishments that I've made in this regard, whatever. And, I'm open to other opportunities in the future to, continue in that realm, or I'm, at some point looking at alternatives that might allow me to pivot into, so you could, that's how you can explain to those trusted people that you are going to explain what you're looking to do. Try to have a professional, well-crafted, succinct statement of what you're looking to do. Because here's the deal. If you come to me, let's say I'm, in your network, or somebody referred you or whatever, and, you come and you say, I'm somebody who works at whatever company, and you want to work at that company. If you don't have that, well, I'm currently looking at opportunities where I could best utilize my XYZ skills. And that's why I'm so interested in learning more about this organization, because from what I've heard so far, it seems like, there's blah, 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 and you can kind of put that out there so they understand what you're looking for and what you're looking to do, instead of, I'm looking for a new job, can you help me? Right? You want to give them some so that they can help you much easier and better. And when they're struck by your professionalism, that's good, because it sticks with them as well. And they might then, remember that in the future as well. Right. And by the way, yes, go ahead.
Alyssa asked, what if you're leaving a toxic work environment with a bad supervisor? Who do you put as a reference for that job?
Yeah, that can be a tough one. And let's face it, we do have those situations, right? Unfortunately, and hopefully not a lot of those situations, but there are situations where it's a toxic work environment. You did not respect your boss. You maybe were professional, of course, but it's not someone you'd want to put down as a reference, right? So I think in those cases, I would look at a couple things. If the situation were that your immediate boss was largely the issue and the reason for your extremely unpleasant time there, all of that, sometimes the boss's boss or someone higher up on the chain, or maybe someone in a different department that you helped with some type of work. Maybe they supervised a small portion of your role in something else. Maybe you could put that, right? But for federal, for example, when they have the little check mark, may we contact, and you always have to give the employer name and their, whatever. And then is it okay to contact them? Putting no for one of them is okay. It's not a deal breaker, right? And if they asked you about that, and if they brought you in and said, we noticed that you had put no on that one, you would want to very delicately and very professionally, to say, I'm very proud of my work history and, what I've been able to do, and da, 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 da. I wanted to make sure that for references, I could give you somebody who could best talk about my XYZ skills. And in this last position, there was not very much interaction. There really wasn't, as my former boss, my most recent boss or whatever, there was not as much. She was not really present in the in most of the things, and that's why I think you'll get more substantive, helpful information from, you could do something like that. So that's what I would say. Are there any other questions, Lexi, at this point?
No, not right now.
Okay. The other thing that you can do is, like, when you go to join a group, and I'm just going to give you an example of, like RPCV Jobs is a great group, right? It's about jobs and it has job postings. And if you're not on it, look for it on, actually, I'm sorry, there's that one, but I'm actually thinking of the Facebook one with RPCV Jobs. But any of those, when you go into those, you can actually turn off the updates so that it doesn't alert your whole, contacts and that, all of that you've joined, this group or that group, right? Especially if you're joining a group that's like tips for job seekers or, Job Seekers United. So you want to be careful with that too. And just, there's so much more you can do. And I agree with Alyssa. I think this is a great topic maybe to expand. And we at one time had even someone who, an RPCV, we've had RPCVs who've worked at LinkedIn. I'm wondering if I can even maybe get somebody from LinkedIn to, who works there, an RPCV, to come and maybe, do it in conjunction with me or cover that topic. It's always nice to have some guest speakers as well. So. All right, so let's see here what we have. When to tell your current boss. So in general, you would want to tell your current boss once you get that formal offer. Once you know that it's a sure thing, right? Like once you get that offer. If you tell them before, like we said in the beginning, there might be some retribution, there might be some fear of some things happening. So you may not tell them, right? Definitely give adequate notice. Now, your standard professional advance notice is 2 weeks, okay? There may be times where you can't give that amount, but I would always try at least to give a 2-week notice. That said, if you're in a current project and it's a huge time where this is like the project is, coming to fruition in, within 4 weeks, you might try, if you can, to give them more. To stay through that project. That's going to leave a very good taste in your former employer's, mouth, to say, I don't want to leave you in a bad situation. So here's what I'm prepared to do. If you can negotiate that with your other job, or it might be, I realize that we have this, project coming to fruition. And so here's what I can offer within the next 2 weeks. I can make it a priority to do X, Y, Z, to put that into the best light possible, whatever, so that they can have what they would have needed from me for that presentation or whatever. You try to put yourself in that position of, wanting to help them and not wanting to put them in a bad position. Okay. So
we have 2 questions in the chat.
Great.
The first one is from Alyssa. She says, let me see.
Oh, I think I can see it right here.
Yeah.
A recruiter hiring manager to co-present about LinkedIn. What are recruiters hiring managers looking for in LinkedIn profile? Oh, that's like another suggestion, probably for our webinar. That's great. Thank you, Alyssa. My goodness, you need to keep feeding these to me. These are great topics. I love it. And LinkedIn is huge. I think it would be a really good session to have more on. We've done some in the past too, but there's so much that can be done, like updating and such. So wonderful. And then Andrew has a question. It looks like, how can you convince a prospective employer during an interview that you are not flaky? Okay. So Andrew, I'm going to ask you a follow-up question. Is this in regard to, like, when you say flaky, what has led them to believe, or what are you afraid has led them to believe that you are flaky? So you'd have to counter that. I guess I need to know maybe that, because I don't think they would automatically assume that you're flaky unless maybe you're talking about a situation where you've had multiple positions and they've been very short term. So AKA what comes across as a job skipper, right? Maybe that's it. If that's the case, I would probably address that in your own, when you're sharing, like why you're interested in this opportunity. You might say, I've had several shorter term opportunities that I've taken, and I'm really excited now that I've found this position really speaks to my intense desire to blah, 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 blah. And it's the kind of position that I look forward to really sinking my teeth into and growing with the organization for the long haul. So, you want to make sure that they are reassured that you're not just going to be the, fourth person that they, where you've left in, less than 6 months or a year, whatever. So I hope that answers it, Andrew. If it doesn't, please put some more in there, and I'm happy to go back to that. So, in the meantime, when we're talking about when to tell your current employer, sometimes it's okay to tell them. I mean, I think of, for example, Peace Corps headquarters, where I worked for 12 years, right? We have the 5-year rule generally, and I was very fortunate to get some extensions and then become an expert consultant. But in general, it is a 5-year rule maximum. So the departments, they know that you're going to need to start looking, right? Once you get to that 3-year or 3 or 4 year point, you've got to be thinking about what's next, right? So there's not as much of a need to keep it all so like under wraps, right? But you might have a job where the employer's very supportive and knows that maybe you've kind of outgrown the position. Maybe in your performance evaluations, when you've been talking about, what you've done and what you're looking to do, where, the direction you're looking to do something that's not something that they have. So they know that, in the future you are looking at, exploring opportunities, but you really are thankful for, and you've, enjoyed this opportunity. You can tell them in many different ways, but sometimes it's not so bad to tell them. It just depends. Your employer, whether they might take it negatively, whether that might negatively impact your work level and load and all of that once you tell them. So you need to make that decision. But sometimes it is okay, is what I'm trying to say. Okay. All right, let's see. So we are at the Q&A part. All right, I see another, let's see. Nope, there's not any other questions right now, but I would invite you at this point to consider, just unmuting yourself if you have any question related to, conducting a, discrete job search or anything related to this. And then I'll also open it up after that. If there's any other questions, after I'll probably turn off the recording here after this topic questions are gone, and then I can certainly stay on a little bit and answer other questions that you might have. So are there any other questions?
Andrew followed up his question with, also, if you are currently working, but you're looking for a change.
So how do you convince a prospective employer during an interview if you're currently looking, but you're looking for a change? Or are you talking about telling maybe your current employer? That's what he's probably. How can you, okay, also if you're currently working, but you're looking for a change. Okay, so I presume you're talking about, like, how do you tell your employer, your current employer, if you're looking for a change? Maybe just drop in the yes or no if that's the case. Yes, or for Andrew, happy to answer that question, but just want to make sure that I understand the direction that it's going in. I would say in general with that, if you are currently working and you're looking for a change, when you are talking with your employer, if you're talking about trying to tell them, if they are supportive and they, you think that they wouldn't, there wouldn't be retaliation or anything negative repercussions to telling them, you might tell them in the form of, first telling them how much you've, really, you've really enjoyed, your, this opportunity and these last 3 years, whatever it has been, you've really, all of that. and you're, currently beginning to consider some ways that you might gain additional skill sets, and you're looking at really moving in the direction of whatever it is, right? Refugee, immigration, whatever. And so you're, not that you're looking to leave tomorrow, but you're just, you're looking at that. If they, have ideas, you're thankful for, just what the role that your current job has played in this, and, and you'll continue to do you'll continue to do your very best in this role, while you begin to, think a little bit more about what, long term. You can even start it with, I've been spending a little more time of late looking at my long-term goals. I'm so grateful having come back from Peace Corps and having been able to, whatever, and you can kind of couch it like that. And then I'm starting to think a little more about some of the long-term goals, such as, and thinking of, potentially exploring at some point, not today necessarily, but, looking at exploring some opportunities in that area. And, just letting them know and saying, but I'm still deeply committed here and, passionate about what we're doing. And I, will remain, my work will, something will remain.
Andrew said, addressing the prospective employer's concern that you are not committed to your work, convincing them that they won't have to worry about your commitment to them if they hire you. I think he's concerned about the prospective employer's opinion on him searching for a job while he has one.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. Thanks, Lexi. Yes, you do not, I want to say almost everybody does they get their next job before they quit their job. That's a very much, it's part of how things work. Like, nobody's going to judge you for doing a job search while you're working. In fact, oftentimes it's easier to get a job when you're working, right? Because you're seen as, you're current, you're in the field, you're, all of that, right? Versus, trying to break in, right? You're in the job market, you're already working in. And so I don't think you have to worry about your commitment to them, and if you are, because you're doing a job search before. But again, be careful about when you do that job search. You're sending those vacancy things not during the work hours, I hope, right? You don't want to give that employer the impression that you're looking for a job on your old job's dime, on your current job's, right, paycheck. So you want to make sure that you send those in the evenings or, whatever, before your standard work hours, right? And that you don't use your work email, so that it's very clear that you're separating your personal and, your professional life, and, not charging your employer for what you're doing, your job search on the other. So I think you'll be just fine with that, Nathan. Okay.
We have a new question that says, how do you deal with job contract penalties for leaving early? Would this cause your former employer not to recommend you for a new position?
Ooh, yeah. I mean, there are some jobs that do have the contracts, right? And it's not that they can make you necessarily stay, like, you cannot leave, you absolutely are, but if you do, you're breaking your contract, and oftentimes that's not seen as professional, right? So I would say in general, you wouldn't want to break your contract. But if it's a situation where it's either it is negatively impacting your health to the extent that you need to worry about, right, your health, you may need to break that contract. And in those cases, I would have really kind of a heart-to-heart with the employer when you do say that you need to step away, to just, and put it out there and just say, I'm so sorry. When I took this position, I really felt I could commit to the and unfortunately, I'm just, whatever. Give the kind of the reason, I'm not able. It's impacting my health, and I really need to step away and take care of my health. And I apologize, right? I mean, I had a similar thing. Well, mine wasn't a contract. They knew. I told them that I would give them a year. When I came back from Peace Corps, it was kind of this exciting job that I'd be traveling to Chile, Argentina, Mexico, and Spain, international marketing consultant, and I'd be based in Iowa where my family was. So I was all excited to, by that. And it just was so not the fit for me. I loved the company. I'd worked for them before, but in this role, it was doing something very different. And even the like Spanish, they wanted me because of, my Spanish too. And for me, like, yes, my Spanish was good, right? It was very good, but it was not like annuities, talking about like annuities and helping the wealthy to protect their assets against, from the masses. That was not my value. That was, I got more into it. I was like, oh my gosh, this is what this means, international marketing. No, I just can't. And I did leave in less than a year. I'd only given them a year commitment, but I left less than that. And I just explained, I'm so sorry. It just is not the right fit. And I want to be able to give you, I would want to be able to give you everything you deserve. And I'm just not in a place where I'm able to, do that and whatever. And they actually took it very well. They were, very professional. We remained in touch, and, some may not, some, whatever. And so of course, if they don't take it well, you wouldn't want to use them when you have a choice of what ones you're using. You don't have to have references. Generally, when they ask for references, you don't have to always have, every employer has a reference and your most three most recent. Maybe you don't put your most recent on, right? Certainly you wouldn't share that generally if it is in most situations, if it's your most current that you're still working at, you would go back before that so that, they don't find out before, the time at which you want them to find out, which is after you have that job offer. And speaking of job offers, sometimes with federal, I know you get that tentative offer and then it's pending the background check and all of that, which is pretty, it's pretty safe bet if you've gotten the tentative offer and you don't have anything, necessarily in your past that, would compromise or whatever. It generally is a pretty secure, but it's not guaranteed. So, but oftentimes, if it's going to be a long like clearance, like if you got accepted and you're going to be in the Foreign Service or something, whatever, they'd be having to get clearance. If they have to give clearance for it, then that can take months and months, so you wouldn't necessarily want to give your notice until you got the final, is what I would say in that
Alyssa
case.
offered flip side of this discussion. In an interview, how do you describe a job that was a toxic environment, or had a difficult supervisor or team members in an interview?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's where I would say, Alyssa, you'd want to remain positive, but not the Pollyanna, oh, it was great, everyone was wonderful. And that wasn't the situation, right? You might say, if they ask you to, describe the most recent job that, you were in, I would focus on the work that you did. In my most recent job, I'm very proud of the fact that I utilized, my job was to do this, and I wouldn't go there to the toxic, I wouldn't bring out, and it was a toxic, or it was a toxic work environment, unless they somehow got to that, or there was some question that led you to say, I left, it was a difficult situation, or it was, a toxic work environment or something. If they ask you more about that, then I might say, if you were, trying to describe that, to say, one of the things that I value most about a team and an organization is, one that has, a strong sense of team and an environment where people are, supportive of each other. And unfortunately, in my last, job, that wasn't as much the case. It was a lot of talking about people behind their, just different, cliques or whatever. And I just, to me, to be most effective, I want to be in an environment where we're committed to giving what it, and coming together and, whatever. And so I'm looking for an environment that is, better, suited for my personality and my commitment to whatever. That's how I would do it. But you would never want to be like, oh, it was awful, it was so toxic, the boss wouldn't even show up, and then she'd come in and she'd yell at us, because that's just gonna, of course, turn them off. Okay. Any other questions? We have a few more minutes left. Either in the chat box, or you can certainly unmute yourself. If not, I think I'll go ahead and end the recording, and then if somebody wants to stay on after, for additional purposes, we could certainly do that. Okay, let me Let me just get out of my, oh my goodness. Are there any final questions that are coming with this, Lexi?
No, there's none in the chat.
Okay, I'm just trying to get my, all right, here we go. This is not letting me, I'm sorry. There we go. I'm going to stop the sharing, and that way we can see each other, and I'll go ahead and end the recording. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And if you do have other questions or concerns or certainly other ideas, please let me know. You can always reach me at careers@peacecorpsconnect.org. Thanks, everyone. Make it a great day.